Tomahawk City.
Oh, we're so back. I know you were missing
John's
it.
back.
Our producer, John, is healthy enough to do the show. How many medications is he currently on? Who could say? 3? But guess what? He's got a new offensive coordinator and a new head coach. Is he happy? That's for another show. This is the DLS Dallas Stars pregame show. Sam is over at the AAC. Luds and I are here. Let's talk Stars and Hurricanes right now.
Get ready, boys.
There it is. Tuesday night in Dallas, at least for Texas standards. And guess what? We have a new player, or at least a return to the lineup to talk about. This is the DLS Dallas Stars pregame show. Owen Newkirk, Craig Ludwig, Sam Nessler, and of course, producer John Anderson is back after a sick hiatus. We are so glad. By the way, big thank you to Tanner Rotman for filling in the other day. He was great, but we got our guy, right? Our boy, yeah, is he? By the way, I also found out pretty quickly as John was doing other things for Mavs yesterday, it is maybe not that beneficial to be in Tanner's debt. He calls on it quickly.
Hey, so, John, Tanner brings beer with him.
Ooh.
I just want you to know.
Bring it up.
I don't drink beer, Luds. You know this. Sorry.
All right, let's get right to it. Sam, the big news of the day, Roope Hintz back in the lineup. Missed 3 games with an upper body injury. They didn't really talk much about it, but he's in. Justin Ritzkovian was sent down. So was Matej Blumel. Blumel was called back up today for cap reasons. And the other lineup news, Brendan Smith is going to stay in the lineup and play consecutive games. But let's talk about Roope Hintz first.
Yeah, it's huge. Pete DeBoer said we are a different team with Roope Hintz in the lineup, and that's putting it gently. That he is a massive part of this team in terms of pace, in terms of possession, in terms of their power play, and he's a huge part of the defensive on the faceoffs. He does everything for this team. So they are a very different team with him. They're more dangerous. They're more balanced. They hope they can spread the wealth a little bit more and not have to count on a few of the same guys like they've been dealing with a little bit here lately. But the interesting part about that is, where do people go? Pete said he really liked Wyatt Johnson back in the middle of the ice. He said he really loved Ben with Duchesne. So where does that go? Do they put Johnson back on the right wing of that? The other interesting thing that I talked to Pete is he mentioned back in training camp about how he really liked the fact that they had a lot of centers, and he said we can't have too many centers. But I followed up with that today after he mentioned specifically Wyatt in the middle of the ice and said, how do you balance that? And he had a really interesting answer. He said, look, it's all about the playoffs in the end of the day. So we have young guys, Maverick Borks and those type of players that can play center and can get through and survive the regular season, is the way he put it. But in terms of playoffs, you look at the teams they're going to face and you look down the middle and you got the big guys, right? He mentioned Vegas as a perfect example of strong, physical veteran centers that you need to be able to match up with in the playoffs in order to have success. And for the Stars, he said, we're going to have guys that play center all season, but when it comes to the playoffs, Hintz, Duchesne, and Johnston, those are their centers. So it's going to be really interesting to kind of follow that track with how they line up over the next, few weeks and then few months before they get to the playoffs to kind of see where they go. But Roope Hintz coming back in is huge. Ritzkovian did well while he was here. Obviously, Blumel was a little bit better, and we'll be back in the lineup again tonight with another shot.
Well, Blumel not only was a little better, he scored a goal. That's a huge difference.
Important.
And I told you the other day he needed to score, and he did, and he gets the call up over Ritzkovian. But I think he was higher up in the pecking order anyway, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's more what they're looking for right now as well.
He's definitely more noticeable than anybody else that's been around, or that they pop in and pop out for sure.
Although we might see R2 Huru back at some point, because I think he's still doing just fine down in Cedar Park. There's Sam was waiting for it. Sam,
I knew it.
For the first time this season, we saw 2 players wearing the full visor bubble, and they actually posed for a little video with their Stars videographer Brendan Bauer at the beginning of the morning skate today, as we saw Mason Marchment with the team for the first time.
Yeah, great to see Mason after that was the first time I had seen him on Sunday after the Detroit game. And great to see him on the ice. As you mentioned, he had the bubble, him and Matt Dumba taking a little picture. Funny part is we saw them both on the ice. We're not going to see either of them tonight, as Dumba's going to be the scratch for the second straight game. And Mason Marchment, Pete DeBoer said, is still a ways away. That timeline I remember was right before the Four Nations break, beginning of February, that West Coast road trip. He said he's still on pace for either right before that or right after that Four Nations break. So still a bit of time here. As we know, Dumba skated with the team for a little while before he came back in after his similar injury, as Pete DeBoer called it. So good to see Mason back with the team. I've talked to Pete a bunch about what it means to just have those guys in the room. They're huge leaders, big part of the room, big part of the energy of the group. So good to have him back here, not just around the team, but skating and morning skate.
The Stars have played a lot of hockey lately, and I think one of the things that they brought up today, Pete was talking about, Carolina's on the second night of a back-to-back. We didn't play yesterday, but we have to be able to take advantage of that. And he brought up how much they've played. A couple of the guys on the traveling party mentioned that they've been traveling to a game for 8 straight, meaning they haven't been at home for 2 in a row in over 2 weeks, and they've played and moved and traveled them around. And that wears on them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking at some of the numbers. They've played 9 games in the last 15 days, 14 games in the last 26 days since that Minnesota game right after the Christmas break. That's a lot of hockey. I mean, they're playing almost more than every other night at this point. And so this is kind of the tail end of it. We'll get 2 days off after this, which is amazing for them. They haven't had that in what feels like forever. Well, it's only a 3-game week, which same as if anyone who watches our show knows, we don't get a lot of those. It gives us 2 full shows tomorrow and Thursday, and it gives the Stars 2 full days of practice, or at least scheduled practice as of now. So this team has been going through it, and just like we talked about when they had the whole flu bug and everything like that, they were not only going through playing a lot of hockey, they were doing it without a lot of important players. And we know Tyler Seguin went out early December, then the Mason Marchment situation, Roope Hintz the last few games. They're missing big time players that play a lot of minutes, take up a lot of space in the room, on the bench, on the ice. So it's going to be huge to get Roope back in tonight, and it's going to be huge to get through what should be a really tough game. I mean, Carolina is, tired. They're tired coming off a back-to-back. They had a really good comeback win at Chicago yesterday. It's a very good team. We know what they can do, even when you get a lead on them, like we saw when we were in Carolina. So it's a big matchup tonight against a really good team, and both teams are going to be fighting it a little bit. So this should be a big test for Dallas to put up another good performance when they're maybe not at the 100%.
Sam, did you ever get to, was it what the injury was for Hintz, or was it just, as far as you got, was upper body, right?
Upper body, yeah. They're not. I don't believe. I'll try more, but I don't believe they're going to share much more than that.
I want to ask Lud something about this, and then Sam, you can chime in because you heard him say this morning.
Yep.
Pete mentioned with Hintz's injury or getting him recovered, he says, once you realize that there's not going to be any further structural damage, and that's what he meant. And it was he was using structural as sort of a generalized term. It's all about when the player feels right and ready to go, and it's in his court. I maybe misinterpreted, but the way I read it was kind of that Hintz took a little longer than they thought. That was did you read that the same way, Sam?
Maybe not that way, but in the sense of that they were looking at, all right, is there anything broken? Is there anything that we need to actually repair? And then after that, we know Luds has some opinion on Roope Hintz in general in terms of his pain threshold and things like that. So maybe it was that. Maybe it was just, hey, you're ready to go in terms of you're not going to break it, you're not going to make it worse. The famous line from Miracle, and when you don't want to make it any worse, but whenever you're ready, you're ready. And that's the kind of the freedom they gave a veteran player.
That's kind of why I asked that, because, there's a lot of things that are important about Roope, right, in his game. But big thing for me is his speed. And when you talk about having him back in the lineup, it creates, especially when they're at home and, Carolina's on the road, they're coming off, game last night, but it's matchup problems. And what Hintz does is he backs people off. And that's why I was curious when they say it's upper body, and because his feet and his legs are fine. And so that's what I'm concerned with. He can he can do enough. He can do damage with everything that he has, but he can do the main damage is what I'm talking about, using his speed to create openings for everybody else with that speed of his. And so skate, it'll be interesting. Will he take faceoffs tonight? You know, how many faceoffs does he take? And because when you say structural, I immediately think of something that could get displaced.
Yeah.
You know, whether in your hand, a broken finger, or structural means a bone couldn't jump. It doesn't have a shoulder in and out. You wouldn't say that with a shoulder.
Right.
Which I guess we don't really care what it is, but well, we kind of.
Well, I mean, he was hit up high, so you wonder about the head. You worry about
But
whether
that
it's
doesn't fall into
concussions or not.
structural.
Yeah, well, I wondered if when he said
Maybe he
structural,
just throws you off. It's
that's
that
what-
lawyer speak stuff
I thought
coming
that's
out.
what it was. And,
Yeah.
but again, look, I'm not here to tell you that you have to rush back from a head contact. Like the science has changed dramatically over the years, and you have to be really careful about that. But whatever it was,
Especially in game 40 something.
Yes.
Right? I mean, middle of the
right,
season.
whatever it was, I just got the hunch that hearing from Pete DeBoer this morning, he was saying that they figured out, again, just the way he said it. I'll have to go back and listen to it again. But in the room, it sounded like he was saying, yeah, he was good, but then we just had to wait for him to be ready.
For him to personally be ready.
That's right. Personally be ready.
Yeah,
he said,
yeah.
because he said something to the effect of, we had to wait for it's on the player to let us know when he's ready at that point.
Yeah.
So he went out of his
watch.
way to say that. Nobody asked him about that
Yeah.
timetable. He just brought that up. So
Something to watch to Lud's point as well, to see maybe if it was something shoulder, arm, anything like that, is if they do put him on a line with Wyatt Johnston, to give him the freedom to have Wyatt take faceoffs. Because if he's with Robertson and Dodonov like he was, neither one of those guys takes faceoffs. So that kind of might be telling for what the injury is or how ready he is if he has another center on his line.
I'll tell you the most interesting thing that you said tonight, Sam, to me, is come playoff time, Wyatt's at center.
Yep.
Tells me what they're looking for.
got
and
his
I
three
asked Pete
centers.
that this morning, Sam, and that's why we're not really sure, because they didn't run lines this morning. So we'll find out in your warm-up when you text and tweet it out. I asked him, with Roope being out, they had to do a lot of shuffling. Is there anything that he particularly liked? And the first thing he said was Wyatt Johnston moving back to center.
Yep.
So
Yep.
go ahead,
Yeah,
Sam.
I was just gonna say he has guys that he's mentioned multiple times. Sam Steele's another one where he's mentioned that he likes them at center, and they have a ton of centers, which is a good thing. You want centers. You have guys that can take faceoffs. You have guys that can be flexible within the system to take faceoffs on each side. But when it comes down to it, you need a guy that's a center in terms of defensive coverage, in terms of the whole forecheck and everything like that. So when it comes to the most important time, I believe they have their three, maybe even four if they want Sam Steele in that fourth line center.
See,
they're going to have some guys that have to kind of float around outside of those four.
But that tells me if you're having Hintz, Duchesne, and Wyatt in the middle, you probably don't have the other guys that you want Wyatt to play with. You want somebody that can put
Not
the
right
puck.
now, you
Not
don't.
right now, you
Yep.
don't. So by saying that that's our three centermen for the playoffs, it kind of, because we've been speculating. Do they want this? Do they want that?
Well,
Do they want
and
that-
Pete used the comparison of today with the Hurricanes, their depth center. Then he said, we're going to play Vegas. And he started rattling off the four centers with the Golden Knights. And he said, with Hintz, with Duchesne, Johnston, you mentioned Bork or Steele, I think we can compete with that.
And it always has been, you build your team down the middle. And so,
Yep.
and from the goalie out. So there's your goaltender, there's your big defenseman, there's your big center. Then it started to change where you've got two centermen and a defenseman and a goalie. And now they've got the luxury of having three centermen if that's the way it's going to go. That's why when you look at this team and the way Jim Nill and Pete DeBoer look at it is, now with Tyler missing for however long that's going to be, we need another piece. And where then put together what Pete DeBoer said about we need to be bigger and stronger on the wings and things like that. Okay, maybe now it all kind of seems where it goes. So
Yep.
I'm thinking that the focus has changed. Well, I think they can kind of cover both of them, but now, whether it's a defenseman, but I think now their priority is looking at a winger.
Big,
I
strong
immediately
winger that
look
can
and I go,
power
I just
play,
wonder,
physical.
the Islanders, I think, are probably not going to make the
Would you play
playoffs.
Brock Nelson at wing? I like it because he can play center too. You can never have too many centers. Sam, warm-up's about to start. Go let us know how they line up, because I'm going to show our lineup card, and I'm not sure it's going to be what it is, but I'll show my guess in a minute.
All right, boys. I'll see you.
Thanks, Sam. All right, Luds, let's talk about it before Sam gets to it. John, if you would throw up that first Stars forward group, Here's the guess. And the reason why I did this was I first started to build this today and said, okay, well, Pete's talking about it. He's going to put Wyatt at center. And then I said, wait a minute. No. Because he mentioned specifically today he liked what Wyatt was doing with Robo. Okay, so they'll keep them together. Okay, well, then what are you going to do with Hintz? I almost switched Johnston with Dodonov and had it Robertson, Hintz, Johnston because they like that group, especially with Wyatt playing with Jason. You could put Dodonov with Duchesne and Ben, and that would be fine. But this is what, that Ben, Duchesne, Johnston line was really good before Roope's injury. So I started with this, moving Blumel back to the left and moving Stankoven down with Bork. Steele on the fourth line center. You could see Steele move. I mean,
I can see Steele playing left wing with Bork and Stankoven.
There's a lot of interchangeable parts
because
here.
you got a deeper team in Carolina now. You've been able to get through with 2 lines deep a little bit. I think with Carolina, you would like to have 3 lines and be able to bounce them around. And I think if you Steele can play up on the wing, we've seen that. And then what you have the luxury of doing is maybe leaning on those 3 lines consistently, and then being able to throw in your 4th line minute-wise.
Matej Blumel scored his first goal of the season in the NHL and his second of his career the other night against Detroit. How does that, obviously it earned him another game because Ritzkoven got sent down, but how does that change anything as far as coaching perspective?
What the goal isn't so noticeable for me, it's how many opportunities he actually had. So that could be why exactly that Blumel is going to be where he is, because he's proven that he can get into areas and get those chances and create chances for whoever else he's playing with. So that might be, again, game 40, game 50, you have time to take a look at him and let's see what he can do over the course of the next 5 or 10, whatever that time frame is going to be.
All right, let's go to the defense and goaltending for the Stars, because guess what? No changes. And so we see the same group, including Brendan Smith playing for the 2nd consecutive game. He hasn't played consecutive games since before Christmas.
Listen, I think where they're at with Matt Dumba is starting to get a little bit clearer. I don't think we exactly know, but you've got to get Brendan playing some games. Give him 2, 3, 4 games, because you want, again, if he's going to be a piece, because you get into the playoffs, generally you need 7, 8, 9 defensemen in the playoffs. Somebody's going to get dinged up when you're playing every other night, and you can't have a player, I don't care which one of these players it is, going through and playing 1 game, sitting out 7 to 10 games, playing 1 game. You got to get him into some kind of rhythm. And he didn't do anything that would justify taking him out of the lineup. So I think that they're going to give him a little bit of a runway here, and they're probably going to pop, maybe these are the 2 guys that are going back and forth now, which hopefully that doesn't affect, if anything, it would affect Matt Dumba more than it would affect Brendan, because Brendan knows his role and he knows he's been in and out of that. So
I have 3 tidbits for you on Brendan Smith from this morning. One was Pete said he was really solid, really liked it. He said that against Colorado they had, I think he said 10 grade A scoring chances against, and that Detroit game that was down to 3, and that was much better. He didn't give all the credit to Brendan Smith, but he said the team defended much better, and we talked about Detroit had a bunch of scoring chances, but no real high danger ones in that 2nd and 3rd period.
They don't have the dynamic players that Colorado does either.
But that was what Pete said, and so he really liked that. So then I went and talked to Brendan Smith today for a little while, and the first thing I did was I told him about your joke, and he loved it, which was, Luddy said it's a good, because we were making the joke, he only seems to play when he plays against former teams, and Luddy said, well, it's a good thing he's played for a bunch of teams. So I told Brendan that, and he laughed. He goes, that's really good. I like that. Then he told me he was walking around shaking hands going, hi, Brendan Smith, nice to meet you. Because he hasn't played. He wanted to make sure that his teammates knew who he was. And he acknowledged when we were having a longer conversation about it's hard to be a vocal leader if you're not playing. You can't go up to a guy and say, what was that on a mistake if they don't know you playing in the lineup at all. He said, if a guy comes to me and asks something, I'll say something. But he said, unless I sort of establish himself as playing regularly, you can't just run into another guy and go, hey, you can't do that, and start correcting things.
But if it's going to get down to a certain point in the season where you're going to have to make a decision who's going to be starting in the playoffs, let's just use Matt Dumba, for instance, because he's the other guy that's been in and out. Between those 2 guys, the way that Smith is handling it and the way that the players are going to react to Brendan Smith because of that and his demeanor and the way he is a team guy. I'm not saying Dumba's not.
Right.
that carries over into that room across the hall.
It's also Brendan Smith came into this season understanding that this was
but
a
I'm
new
just
role,
saying,
but how he's
as a
handled,
coach, you know who the players may lean away from. They may lean to both of them, and then that makes it, right down the middle. But sometimes when you're sitting there and you're going, man, I don't know, they're both. I mean, I could flip a coin, but the guys are really leaning towards that guy over there because he adds a little bit something different at times, right? And he doesn't. He's not going to say he's a heavyweight, but he knows when not to maybe stir the pot a little bit.
Yes.
And not that Matt Dumba doesn't, but I think that Brendan can walk the line a little bit better, where Dumba's been kind of caught at a couple things.
Well, and remember, Dumba as well also still has the face shield on. And
I'm thinking, playoff.
You're
time.
thinking down the road.
I'm down the road. Yeah, I'm always down the road because all this stuff is just this is just getting your appetite wet for game 83.
The last thing, Brendan Smith, and I had to share this with you because you know how in the Stars dressing room at the AAC, they have the whiteboard on the wall and they'll typically write the line. And so all the numbers for the lineup for that night will be up there, not for the media, but for when the players get in the afternoon. Well, Brendan Smith, for the Tuesday game against Detroit, he goes in and he said nothing was on the board. He said some of the guys were getting a little antsy, like who's playing, who's in, who's out kind of thing, even though there's not that many. He goes, I had talked to Pete. Pete told me I played. He goes, I knew I was in. So he went up and wrote a 2 on there.
Just that was the only number on the board.
And he put the 2, and that was the only one. And I thought that was hysterical.
But that's what I mean. The guys will see that, and the guys will love that.
Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about some other things. First, power play goal
we
at
got the
home.
lines from Sam. You're going to want to see
we
this.
have the lines? All right, let's get to that from Sam, and then we'll go back to that.
Let's put it that way.
All right. Yeah. Well, no, not entirely. The lineup card was wrong. Okay. So, John, throw it up there again real quick, and we'll compare notes. He kept Wyatt Johnston together with Jason Robertson. So it's Robertson, Johnston, Dodonov. They didn't mess with that group. I'm surprised where they put Roope Hintz. Benn, Duchesne, and Bork on the right wing. Third line, Steele, Hintz, Stankoven. That is a completely new group with Blumel, Beck, and Blackwell, your fourth line. Steele, Hintz, and Stankoven is a surprise to me.
That's where he's starting. That's where you got him starting the game. It doesn't mean that's where he's going to finish the game, but you may see a few more minutes out of the top 2 lines, and maybe you're easing Roope in so that you don't come out of the chute and play him as much as you usually do. Let him ease himself into the game, feel comfortable knowing that. And there's going to be times, whether it's Spotter or Pete, they're going to, how you doing? Good. I'm good.
Yeah. And
you'll be able to tell the way he says good.
And then
sometimes you say good, and that just is like, yeah, I'm cool. Everything's good here. Or you say, I'm good, and which means I want to play more. So I just think this may be a way for Hintz to get into it and get his mind right, that he knows he's good to go and he's as close to 100% as he's going to get.
One thing I noticed this morning was they did not have Roope Hintz on the first power play unit. He was on the second group. They had Duchesne staying up there. They scored a power play goal against Detroit at home. Not an easy feat for this team this year.
Who was on that line again with Hintz?
It was on the second unit. Yeah. They took Steele.
No, just in the third. On the
it
third
was
line.
Steele, Hintz.
So
Stankoven.
There's another centerman there. There's another guy that can take a face.
Yes.
Okay.
So on the power play on Tuesday, they scored their only chance, and it was Jason Robertson at the net front, a place we haven't seen him a lot on the power play, with Duchesne shooting from the right circle instead. You like just having a different option and a different look?
Yeah, the thing about Matt Duchesne being over on his offside, he loves being there. That's where he likes to be. You're saying he's on the right side now? It's a one-timer side, but more than likely he's not going to take the one-timer. He's a little bit like Kucherov. Kucherov sometimes like he's taking that one-timer, and he makes that point, that pass to point, Braden Point right there in the slot. It's so deceiving. And I think Matt just loves to be on that side of the ice, and he's a better playmaker there than anywhere else.
That being on his offside,
and we've seen where he can score from over there too.
Yeah.
I mean, he
can go down low and shoot from there.
He likes that upstairs short side high. So maybe it gives him some more. And again, it's a different look, and it's a look that maybe Carolina didn't see. And so all the pre-scouting, all of a sudden they see something different, and you try to throw them off a little bit.
Well, the last time the Stars played the Hurricanes, it was right around Thanksgiving, and it was very different because the fourth line was Oscar Beck, Sam Steele, and Evgeny Dodonov. Sagan, Marchment, Hintz all in the lineup. That line was fantastic. They were good for 2 periods, and then they threw it away in the third against the Hurricanes. We have a lot to talk about, not a lot of time. So let's get right to Carolina. Rod Brind'Amour will coach in his 500th NHL game as a head coach tonight. He's the 79th coach in NHL history to reach that milestone, and he by far has the most wins from an NHL coach in his first 500 games at 306. Can make it 307 tonight if they win. Bruce Boudreau had 301 in second place in that category. Now, Pete DeBoer is at 1,225 games coach, so a lot more experience, but Brind'Amour has been extremely successful in his first 499 NHL regular season games.
Yeah, he's a high energy guy. You just watch him on the bench. He might as well put a pair of skates on. I mean, he's running up and down, and he goes through the wall for his players, but more importantly, the players will go through the wall for him. And they feed off of the guy behind the bench. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. If anything, they despise the guy behind the bench most of the time. But I think some coaches get things out of players by, pushing certain buttons. He gets it out of players because the players know, that everything is for them. And so I think they love playing for this guy. They've taken on his personality. And it was a crime that they were holding out as far as signing a contract with him.
To drag that along and make him go to the end of the deal.
It's just a no-brainer that he was going to be there, but to have to put him through that was ridiculous. So, but anyway, they're man, you go down and you look at stats and things like that. This should be an exciting game tonight, because they both get up and down the ice. There's going to be a lot of pucks that are directed
transition game both ways.
Goaltender. Yeah, I mean they go. I mean, this should be a wide open game. And the goaltender is going to have to be at their best, and especially in where they can create problems, as far as I'm concerned, for Dallas, is when they direct so many pucks at the net, there can be pucks laying around, and making sure that the right guys are covering and being in the right places at the time so that they're not getting those second and third opportunities.
I sent you a bunch of numbers this afternoon.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at Carolina's season. And this is something, I'm not going to share all the numbers, but I wanted Luds to get a snapshot of this. Carolina's 4-1-1 in their last 6 games. They're a good team. They're in second in the Metropolitan Division. Everybody expects them to be a playoff team. They had a phenomenal start, 16-5-1 in their first 22 games of the season. Then, since Thanksgiving, they haven't been that great. They've been okay. They were the, second or third best team in the NHL through the first 22 games. And then they went sub 500 for the next 19, 8-10-1, a little bit better lately. But I looked at these numbers. They were the second best point percentage in the league from the beginning of the year to American Thanksgiving. I don't know why I said American Thanksgiving. It's just Thanksgiving. And then from November 28th through now, they are 24th in point percentage. And the big thing is their offense has dried up. What gives?
Do you want me to tell you?
Yeah,
I can run through it quick.
I would love to hear it.
I'll give you the losses. Forget the wins.
Okay.
Time frame you were talking about. They played Florida twice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They lost both those games.
Yep. Good team.
Bobrovsky gave up 3 goals. If it wasn't Connor McDavid, he's probably the Conn Smythe guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Seattle, they lost to. They used their backup goaltender. The Carolina did. The Islanders, those 2 games, no excuses. Ottawa, Allmark's, he's an $8 million goalie. They beat him. Washington, probably the best team in the NHL right now.
Playing well.
Not bad. And Nashville, I just wrote down embarrassing. There's an embarrassing loss for them. Okay. Jersey, they played on the 27th. They traveled on the 27th.
That was
2
the
days
travel
after
day,
Christmas.
right?
And they traveled on that day. So let's see. Who was the other one? Oh, CBJ. They lost in a shootout.
Columbus has been playing really well.
Really
lately.
good, but they lost in a shootout. They got a point. Okay, so that's what you're looking at. Minnesota, they got a pretty good goaltender there.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Gustafson's been excellent.
Yeah, and he's a top save percentage. He's top 10. Anyway, Tampa Bay, they got a guy that won 2 Stanley Cups there in Vasilevsky, right? Anaheim, that Gibson guy's pretty good, and they got a point out of that game too. And then the last one, Buffalo.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
He's ready for it.
There you go.
I love it.
I look at those as a coach.
It's falling apart.
As a coach, I don't think he's all bent out of shape about all them losses because they lost, 3 or 4 of those games that they should not have lost. The other games, Christmas time, one was a New Year's Eve game, those kind of little distractions in there. So I just think that he's still pretty high in his group.
All right, let's look at the lineup for Carolina real quick as we get ready to wrap up this pregame show. I thought it was interesting that when I asked Ilya Lyubushkin this morning about their players, he immediately said Andrei Svechnikov. And he said, it's not what you think. He's super skilled. He goes, but what I notice most is he's physical. Mm-hmm. And he says he always, in those battles along the boards, leads with the shoulder. He's not just trying to dance around guys. He will run through you.
You know who else is doing that now? Jason Robertson.
Mm-hmm.
Robo's got a little bit of that in him, and he's winning those battles. And yes, I agree. Aho, if it gets to 3-on-3, I would love to see 3-on-3 tonight because I want to see that guy go up against number 55, Thomas Harley.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've won 5 games in the shootout. He's got 4 goals.
Oof.
So
he's pretty darn good.
Yeah,
huh?
so it'd be nice to see him and Harley get against.
And then
I think the fans would love that.
The offense has not been coming from the defensemen of lately. Slavin's got a few points. Burns has been quiet. Goss to spare. That's probably part of why the power play hasn't been great. Walker hasn't had any. But we will see Kochetkov tonight because Anderson played last night in his 500th NHL game, and he's 1 away from 300 wins.
Yeah, he's taken over that number of possessions. They don't know what they're getting out of Anderson anymore. They don't know if he's
remember he was hurt for a while too.
Yeah, I know, but they're just not. And I think he's still reeled in from when he was in Toronto. I mean, he's had a hard time.
Keep an eye on. Oh, we have a super chat. Keep an eye on Jordan Stahl, 11 points in his last 10 games, and Seth Jarvis, 7 goals, 13 points in his last 12. They've been hot. And Ardell, a little Brendan Smith and Roope Hintz. Availability is an ability, and that was going back to us talking about player injuries and getting in and out of the lineup.
Yep, and it's all what they do when they get back in the lineup. And again, it all makes sense with Roope when they said they had to give him a little time. That's just what he is. And I talked about Yuri Lettinen, and very similar. They like to be as close to 100% as they possibly can. Sometimes you got to play hurt.
When the Stars got the 3-goal first period against Detroit, both teams playing the second night of a back-to-back, that pretty much iced the game and allowed them to roll their lines and control the game. Carolina played and won in overtime in Chicago last night. Dallas had the day off. So theoretically, they're the fresher team. But if they don't actually take advantage, get the lead, and put that pressure on the Hurricanes, then it's for nothing. We'll see what happens tonight. It's on ESPN Plus and Hulu, so you can't watch it on Victory Plus tonight. But we will be here to do our full post-game show right after the game. Thanks for joining us.
I believe that they are going to crush these guys tonight.
We all silly like the mayor.